I did just want to share some insights, some thoughts of a bigger, more strategic nature about what BSI is doing as an organization and why we do it in terms of addressing some of the bigger issues in our world today. I mentioned that the world is changing, BSI is changing, career is changing, and we have to change together. So I'm going to touch on a few areas which you might not be aware of completely in terms of what BSI is doing. And all I would say is, whilst I think this is quite rich, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There is an awful lot of things going on in BSI, in the Asia Pacific region, in other parts of the world, in group, in our standards organization, in our national standards body, in our assurance business that you are most familiar with, in our regulatory services business, and also in our new professional services businesses. Hopefully today I can just give you a flavour of what BSI is doing and all of the potential opportunities that we have as a business, because they are many, in fact too many. One of the biggest challenges we have in BSI is that we cannot do everything. There are only so many days in the week and only so much money we can spend, so we have to be very, very selective. So what I'm going to share with you today is some focus areas where we are already active as a company, where I think BSI is going to continue our successful growth in the future by specialising and focusing in these areas. After the presentation, I'll put this down and I'll just make a few general comments about BSI, and then we'll throw it open for questions and answers, and then the real party can begin, because I see that the food is tantalisingly being stored over there. So, Shaping Global Assurance is the title. It's really, what is BSI? BSI, everything that BSI does is there to give organisations that we work with the assurance that they meet the standards of best practice. You know, we're a standards-based organisation. We were set up to develop standards and under a Royal Charter, and everything that we do is hopefully to not just to react to situations in the market today, but also anticipate future needs by shaping the standards that organisations need to address the real world issues in which we're all operating. But BSI goes well beyond just shaping and publishing the standards. We then, and this is where you come in, we then help organisations implement and get value from those standards to extract the benefits through training, through certification, through guidance and consultancy in some, and through regulatory notified body work, for example. And that's what we've been doing for nearly 120 years across a wide variety of topics in virtually every geography in the world. You know, BSI has clients in more than 180 countries around the world. We have offices in more than 30 countries around the world. We're a truly global business, and what we do, and this is where the BSI brand, particularly for those of you that are new to BSI, do not underestimate the power of the BSI brand. The reputation that we have for technical competence and for, above all, integrity is second to none. And I don't say that to be arrogant or to be complacent. That is the feedback we get from our stakeholders, from our clients, from our regulators, from financial institutions, from governments, for example. We are a trusted organisation that through providing global assurance provides them trust to their stakeholders. This is all about trust. As an independent, not for distributed profit organisation, I think there's never been a greater demand for an organisation like BSI in a world in which trust is in many areas being weakened and undermined, whether it's in politics, whether it's in the media, whether it's in business, many, many parts of our lives. Trust has never been more important, and that's why BSI is as relevant today as it was in 1901 when we were set up. So three topics here. A subject that I've spent too much time on in the last 3 years. Brexit actually coming to career is quite good. Brexit suddenly feels a long way away, but it's very real. It's going to happen, and you'll have seen in the media, and don't ask me what is going to happen because I don't know. It's a mess that's been created by politicians, and politicians will have to sort out the mess and make the decisions. it's our job as business people, and when we talk about organizational resilience in BSI, this is a very good test of BSI's resilience. Despite what we might think, whether Brexit is a good thing or a bad thing, what business people have to do is we have to adjust to the market in front of us. If the world changes for whatever reason, as business people, we have to adjust because our clients have to adjust. So for Brexit, in the short term, it will have an impact on us because it's change. In the long term, it may create stronger opportunities. For example, I was just saying in the meeting room, I think one of the first big trade deals that the UK will do when it leaves the EU will probably be with Korea, because the political and economic links between Korea and the UK are already very, very strong. And post-Brexit, I think they could become stronger. So there could be opportunities for a British company in Korea to take advantage of Brexit. So don't worry about Brexit. It'll be okay. It'll be what it will be. In 50 years' time, it'll be nothing. At the moment, it's something, and we just have to get through it. I'm going to talk a little bit about some standards and system certification that are coming down the pipe, some of which you're already working on, some of which are emerging. And then a little bit of an insight for a country like Korea, which is so technologically focused and so digitally savvy. Of all the countries I go around the world, Korea is the one that I observe and everybody holds up as the most digitally savvy. My eldest son has just graduated from university, and he's going to go traveling, see the world, and I've told him to go to China and go to Korea and spend time to learn and see what's going on in these parts of the world, because the future is being made here, as well as in the United States and the UK, but there's some very innovative companies and products and solutions in Korea, and we have to make sure we keep up to speed with that. So I'll talk about technology and the impact it will have on our business, but also what BSI is doing to embrace that technology and bring some of that really smart technology to bear on our business. So Brexit, good news. So when the Brexit referendum happened in 2016, we already had contingency plans in the event of an exit. We didn't expect it to happen. We were surprised when it did. We immediately kicked in, and we've done three things really. Firstly, we've secured the UK's position in the European single standard system, which is nothing to do with the EU. It's to do with all European countries inside and outside the EU. So BSI is going to continue to be a primary member of the European standards system. That's important because in the world of global standards, they're very European-centric. The Americans don't really do standards like ISO standards. They do industry standards. China is becoming a much more of a player in international standards. Japan is very, very active, but the center of gravity of the international standards community is in Europe. So it's really, really important for BSI, as the leading national standards body in the world, to be right at the heart and center of European standards making. And through an agreement we've now got with CEN and CENELEC, the European standards bodies, we've secured that position regardless of Brexit. It requires some change in the statutes, but that has been secured. And that was not easy because that, as you can imagine, was politically very, very sensitive. There were some people, and there still are some people in Europe, who don't want the Brits at the table. They think that we haven't left Europe, we've left the European Union, which is a political union. But look at a map, we're still in Europe, we're still part of Europe, we're still very much a part of the European economic zone as well. So BSI is going to continue to be a very active member in European standards making. Brexit has no effect on our position at ISO and IEC. We're still a council member, one of the leaders of the ISO organization, so we will continue to be at the top table, working with other national standards body, including KSA in Korea, with whom we have a very, very good collaboration. So Brexit, we don't think will have any fundamental impact on our leadership position as a standards body. Second area is in product certification. We are one of the leading notified bodies in Europe across a range of directives, 6 in particular, 4 in product certification. the ones that are listed there. 4 smaller ones as well under lifts, marine equipment, boiler efficiency and measuring instruments, for example. We've secured one, so what we have to do after we leave the EU is to move our notified body from the UK inside the EU. We don't have to do it, we think, but as an insurance policy, depending on what political deal is done, we thought it was prudent. And actually our clients wanted the assurance that BSI was going to continue to be a notified body. So we've already moved our medical devices notified body to the Netherlands. We chose the Netherlands as our base, as a country, very similar legal and regulatory system to the UK. We've moved our construction products business and we're still waiting for 3 more approvals. They've got stuck in Brussels in the bureaucracy at the moment, but I'm confident that we will get those. So for our product certification clients and our medical devices clients, I think we can assure them that in future, post-Brexit, the UK will continue to be able to provide market access to the European Union, the biggest single market in the world, bigger than the United States in terms of an economic area, bigger than China in terms of total GDP. So it's really important that our clients see BSI as a conduit. And of course, we will continue to provide market access to our clients in the UK itself. Whether the UK follows the same European regime or has a different regime, we will still be there to provide assurance to our clients. So whether it's in ProdCert or in medical devices, I think we're well positioned to continue market access for our clients. It's been an enormous administrative and bureaucratic exercise for no benefit to BSI, but it gives us assurance that we'll still be able to offer your clients. And we know that some of our competitors, particularly some of our French and German competitors, have been spreading rumours about BSI not being able to provide this, or the British companies being excluded from the European market. You can with confidence say that's not the case. BSI is actually going to continue and is very, very committed to being an active notified body in the European Union. Because a bit like in standards, people privately in Europe recognise that BSI makes an enormous contribution, not just financially, but our expertise, our knowledge of the regulations and the standards is second to none. And people in Europe actually realise that excluding BSI from that system is also not in their interests. So despite what the politicians might say publicly, I think it's very, very important that BSI stays mutually aligned to our colleagues in Europe. That's all I really wanted to say about Brexit, because I'm fed up of talking about it. To be honest, I've spent 3 years talking about Brexit, and the story is probably going to continue for another one or two years. But you'll read about it in the newspapers, you'll see it in the media. It's just one of these things. It's a bit like trade wars between China and the US. I mean, this is politics playing out in the public media. It's just one of those things we have to adapt to. So what are the things that we can control? So these are just some of the themes and topics which we are already working on. Circular economy. Everybody familiar with this topic? Used to be called sustainability. It's the same topic, but it's a slightly different but important interpretation. We all recognise the challenges we have as a race of people and the planet on which we live to make sure we conserve and preserve the precious resources, limited finite resources that we have on this great world in which we live. And the fact that we are overexploiting those, and it's not sustainable. Population growth, food consumption, lifestyle, rise of the middle classes, all of these issues, and the impacts that we're already seeing through climate change or drought in certain parts of the world, leading to political tensions, for example. This is all about resource utilization efficiency. So circular economy is about basically recognizing that basically resources are finite, and that resources can be and should be continuously recycled. Not always, but basically we can substantially sustain our society by using our resources, well, firstly, avoiding using them in the first place by minimizing resource consumption, but where we do use resources, to make sure they are in a circular loop, that they're recycled, they're used multiple times. And that's to do with consumers, it's to do with businesses, and it's an area where BSI is already leading the way. Some of the drivers there are very, very clear, and I think Asia Pac is no different. In fact, Asia Pacific, the emerging economies of Asia Pacific, basically, who are just as entitled to have the same standard of living as many people enjoy in Europe or United States, but that's not sustainable. So we have to find a smarter way of doing this. So this is a real world issue. It's a global issue. It doesn't relate to one country. It's to all countries. I think some of the stats there are very, very obvious, and the numbers are huge. I mean, I think this whole issue of resource utilization, we're not going to solve this problem by people bringing their own coffee cups to Starbucks instead of getting a coffee cup. And these are all, it's not by one person getting on a bicycle rather than getting in a car. These will all help accumulatively, but the issue is big. It needs a much more structural approach to resolve these issues. And you see there some of the impacts, what will happen if we don't do this as a society. And there may be people in the world, not to mention President Trump, who believes that climate change is not real, but I think the vast majority of people in science is that this is real and we have to do something about it. So we're working with some of our clients on real-world solutions around this. Skanska, which is a large Swedish-based construction company, they were a pioneer of ours on BIM. Skanska was the first company we worked with to be certified to the BIM standard, which is not about circular economy as such, but it's about smart digital construction, reducing construction costs through less materials, for example. But this is a very innovative company, and we're working with them. Their participation in some of our standards around creating standards for supply chain sustainability. Just one of the examples of where we're working with certain clients. Because part of BSI's job, remember, we don't actually write the standards. We build communities of people who have common interest in certain topics. So circular economy is something a lot of people were talking to us about. We facilitated the development of a community of people to talk about this, to identify a best practice or a solution to some of the problems in the circular economy. So one of those solutions was a British standard 8001, which is already well on the way to becoming an ISO. And we know that when a BS is launched, typically the uptake of the BS is quite modest, particularly in the UK. There's a bit of training, but as soon as it becomes an ISO, typically the demand and the interest in this. So our job is to quickly promote the BS through ISO, and then that will go into the international domain. But because we had the BS, we have 3 or 4 years advantage, first mover advantage, to build a thought leadership position, to build a reputation, to build a knowledge, build a community of people. So when it becomes an ISO, BSI should be well positioned to take advantage of the opportunities. So it's a guidance document, but out of these standards, typically there will be derivatives, there will be standards, almost certainly there will be certifiable products and services and training courses and consultancy opportunities, for example, to work in this area. So watch this space. You'll be hearing a lot about the circular economy in the future. And of course it builds upon BSI's already strong reputation in this area. We haven't just started working in this area. You see the standards listed there where we've already, we have standards, or we've been instrumental in developing standards earlier on. So this is just the next iteration of BSI's commitment to working with organizations to address the issue, the long-term issue of sustainability. So, another topic, connected assets. I don't know when it changed. A few months ago, everyone stopped talking about IoT and suddenly called it connected assets. So this used to be called IoT, it's now called connected assets. I don't know why, but that's what people talk about it. So what are connected assets? It's basically it's device talking to device and the use of data, the transfer of data between devices, whether it's between cars and insurance companies, whether it's between traffic lights and traffic control centres in smart cities, whether it's a medical device that might be put inside our body that is connected through the internet to a doctor who can adjust the dosage, for example. I mean, already many of us are using IoT devices in our lives without necessarily realising it. And it's going to be huge. I mean, there are stats that I've seen that people say there may already be 60 billion connected devices in the world. I don't know whether there are or there will be in the next year. I mean, the numbers are huge. Almost every device is going to talk to every device. Think about your lives already. So it's great that the technology enables devices and data to be exchanged, but of course it's not without risk. Anytime there's data transfer, there's risk that that can be stolen, can be abused by criminals or state actors or what have you. So we have to protect that precious data and make sure that devices do what they are intended to do. So that's why we're active in this area across the whole range of topics. I mean, robots, everything's in the cloud. I mean, this whole universe of connected assets is something where BSI is already very, very accessed. So security is important, but of course, if we're going to get the benefits of technology, we have to ensure that it's fit for purpose. You know, we want the technology to be safe and reliable so that people can innovate and develop more solutions and benefits, and that's why we're doing this. We're not the policemen, but we are the enablers of innovation, which will hopefully bring good products and services to improve our lives. Subject you're all aware of, the first city in the world to be kite marked to the Smart City BSI standard, Sejong City. We're going to meet their parent tomorrow, and this is just the start of what seems to be a very long-term relationship. Again, really good example of Korea being the pioneer in this area, using digital technology in a very innovative way. A lot of cities and countries around the world are talking about smart cities. In Korea, are actually doing it. So Korea is very much leading the way, and we need to be learning from Korea, from the experiences of Korean organizations, to help other organizations, other cities around the world to do that. And again, the kite mark is something which is unique to BSI. And nobody else has the kite mark in BSI, and it's a real world need. The Internet of Things, the devices. I mentioned medical devices. I was in our cyber lab in the UK a few months ago, and they were testing an infusion pump. It's a pump that's for somebody who is terminally ill or in pain. It's a device which releases morphine into the blood. It doesn't require a nurse or a doctor to be present. If somebody's in pain, the doctor can dial up the device, and if they have to adjust the dose, they can do it immediately. Tremendous advantage if it works. It has to be safe. It has to be hack-free. It has to be reliable and dependable. There are a lot of IoT-enabled devices out in the market at the moment which are not safe, and there is potentially a big scandal going to happen. And we want to work with organizations like Samsung, like Philips, like Yale, big global leaders that we're working with to make sure that their devices are not just smart, but actually safe as well, all innovated by BSI. Again, lots of standards, PASs and BSs and ISOs, which are being created. These are all creating the intellectual property on top of which we can do training, we can do certification, we can put kite marks. Really, really important work that we're doing. Another thing, mobility. This is the new word for the automotive industry. People don't make cars anymore. People make mobility solutions. Apparently, and as you know, there are companies now who 10 years ago didn't exist. I mean, when we think about cars, we think about Kerr, we think about Toyota, we think about General Motors. Now we think about Tesla, we think about Google cars. Who knows who we'll be buying our cars from, or whether we'll be buying cars in future or leasing them. Who knows? But the whole concept of connected and autonomous vehicles, cars are already connected. There's more computing power in your car today than there was on the Apollo 11 rocket that went to the moon. That's just in one car. So they're already connected devices. They're not yet fully autonomous in terms of being driverless, but they will be. Might be scary to some people, but the first vehicles are already out on the road. Most of our trains in the UK, probably in Korea, are driverless already anyway. So it's already happening. I was just thinking, flying over last night, actually, how long is it before we have a pilotless aeroplane? You know? Would you get on an aeroplane to fly to London knowing that there was nobody sitting up front in the aeroplane? I'm sure technologically it's possible, but so these are some of the challenges that we have to face. How do we make it safe, reliable, to make sure that not just that vehicles are safe and reliable, but also that they're energy efficient, that they don't. It's all connected to circular economy as well. It can be a lot more effective. So artificial intelligence is a key part of making mobility work. The processing of big data and algorithms which enable vehicles to make smart choices, to make risk assessments. When you're driving in the autonomous vehicle, how does it know that person crossing the road is a risk or not? All of the use of AI is all part of that. We're making the first standards in artificial intelligence. We've done many of the first standards in cybersecurity. These are all the building blocks of the autonomous vehicle society in which it's not about the cars anymore. It's not about the metal or the wheels. It's about the technology and the connectivity. So there you see a lot of PASs. The ISO SAE 214134. We've just been talking about that, and that's obviously for the Korean automotive companies, supply chains. That's a really, really critical issue, and we have all the solutions available to help organisations with the cybersecurity dimension of connected vehicles. Again, lots of PASs. PASs are really early stage, quick standards. It can take 3 years to create a full British standard or ISO. The world of technology can't wait. So what BSI does is in a very agile way, in 6 to 9 months, quickly create a community, shape the initial standards, publish and get them out there so that innovators, R&D people, marketeers can start using these standards to innovate, to collaborate, to share technology and best practices, to bring products to markets earlier rather than waiting for standards. And the greater the acceptance of the PAS, the more likely it is. And most PASs eventually pass through, either they become British standards or increasingly they just go straight from a PAS to an ISO. And just because this is don't think that every other standards body in the world is doing this. BSI actually is quite unique. Most standards bodies are reactive and still going through the rather slow process of almost regulatory type of standards. So we're very much leading the way. And these standards, quite small, and these standards in themselves, they might not look very, PAS 1880, assessing and developing control systems for automated vehicles. You might think that's a very small topic. But sometimes these small topics are the key that unlocks the technology that enables people to innovate with other PASs as well. And of course, safety is really, really important, not to be underestimated. Lots of solutions already, which we have in this area. The PAS is and it links to smart cities. It links to circular economy. This is all interconnected. The days when all standards set in isolation are long gone. Increasingly, you have to look at these standards as being connected because they're all addressing common issues around sustainability, connected vehicles, connected assets. They're all interconnected. Our job is to make sense of all these standards and bring them to bear to the market. Subject relevant everywhere in the world, and I think increasingly, certainly in Korea, from what I read about Korea, there's a stronger push, I think, from society in Korea and from employees for better working conditions. Why not? We should encourage people to come to work in a positive way, in a healthy and sustainable way. Health and safety, not injuring and killing people, of course, is important, but also issues like mental health and well-being. Fewer and fewer people work in factories now, more and more people work in offices, more and more people work at home. How do we, as responsible employers, make sure that our employees are safe, healthy, and not being injured in the course of work? Increasingly, legislation is being brought in, but what smart companies, a lot of companies are doing this proactively because it's just, you want to be an employer of choice, so you want to be a preferred employer. So again, not particularly new, but I think the way that society is changing, the expectation, particularly from millennials and younger people, is they're much more selective about where they work, and if they don't think that they are working for a good company that takes care of them, they will work somewhere else. And if we want to attract good talent, or organizations want to attract good talent in future, then it's really important that we have a healthy and safe working environment. And that's where ISO 45000 comes in. This is not just OSAS 18000 with an ISO badge on the front. It actually is a substantial revision around addressing issues like mental health, addressing issues like the gig economy, addressing issues like home working or flexible working. And we shouldn't underestimate the power of these standards to make the workplace a much better place. It might feel like a problem that's been around a long time, but the problem is changing. The risk is changing because the society is changing, and the standards have to keep pace with that society, or hopefully get ahead of those societies. And that's why we pushed for the OSAS to become an ISO. And I think this is going to be one of our fastest growing, well, I think it's already in BSI, one of our fastest growing products at the moment. Innovation is, we've been around a long time as a business. There are not many organizations that survive and thrive for 120 years. And BSI is not just surviving, we are positively being successful. You've seen from annual reports, our growth, our financial positions, our global expansion, our entry into new product areas like cybersecurity and environmental sustainability, for example, or medical devices regulations. And we'll continue to do that, which is what we've been doing for the last nearly 120 years. We all recognize that the future world is being shaped by artificial intelligence, and our standards team are very, very focused on that. Even though, if we're true, nobody really understands what artificial intelligence is. I don't understand. Everyone talks about artificial intelligence. It's everything and nothing. I mean, it's a concept. It's a lot of initiatives, a lot of talk, a lot of ideas, but there's no framework. It's a bit of a wild frontier. Part of our job is to help organizations make sense of to define what artificial intelligence is, to get the language consistent, to get people using the same protocols to exchange information, and to start creating guidance for the responsible use of artificial intelligence and the productive use of artificial intelligence for all of our benefits, for the benefits of the many, not for the few. So absolutely, standards have a role to play in shaping the world of big data and artificial intelligence. We've already been active at BSI, but also at ISO in creating big data standards. There's a whole raft of standards there which are already published. They're already out there. I don't expect you've all read them all. I certainly haven't, but there is a very rich catalogue of relevant standards, first wave standards on which we will be building, working with our communities in the UK, in Europe and internationally. And increasingly these standards will be used as part of the development of artificial intelligence, big data, in all of our lives. Again, I won't dwell on this. An example, AI in medical devices, working with the MHRA, which is the UK medical devices regulator, AMI, which is the American professional body responsible for medical devices, just to show that the BSI communities that we work in, 100 years ago, those communities were only in the UK. The communities we're working in now are global. We're working with companies from Google to Huawei to Microsoft, to you name it. They're all part of this discussion now. So just because we are a UK business, don't think that our activities are restrained to the UK's. We're trying to tap into all of the knowledge and expertise from around the world and create global solutions for that world. So it's about working with industry, with government. There's increasing work to survey organizations to work out what they are doing with AI. We want as many people, as we say, inside the tent, not outside the tent. The more people we can get involved in this process, the better adoption of the standards there will be in the future. Thinking about our assurance business, there's a lot of hype at the moment. Everyone talks about artificial intelligence. Equally, a lot of people are talking about blockchain. Again, you've all heard of Bitcoin and Ethereum, the digital currencies that are out there. I think there are in China or something like 400 recognized blockchain bodies now set up for a variety of purposes, for example. In some respect, it's people playing with technology. It's technology looking for a real world application. There clearly is an opportunity there in blockchain. In the world in which we operate, the world of assurance, if you think about the supply chains in which we operate, whether it's in food or pharmaceuticals or aerospace parts, ensuring authenticity, stopping counterfeit products going into supply chains, ensuring that food comes from where it claims to come from. Blockchain has the potential to follow products in a secure, immutable, undisputable, safe way through the supply chain so that purchasers of products and services can actually evidence that that product is what it claims to be. There's a lot of prototypes. We're working on a couple of examples in the UK on food. There's one on subject close to my heart as a Scotsman, Scotch whisky. 25% of malt Scotch whisky in the world that's sold is fake. So next time you buy a bottle of Johnny Walker or what have you, how do you know that that bottle is really Johnny Walker or hasn't been made in a factory in Vietnam? And that's a real world issue. We have an issue in the UK of lobsters. So we have lobsters. There's a part of England called Cornwall. The best lobsters come from Cornwall. There are more Cornish lobsters on the market in the UK claiming to come from Cornwall than has ever been raised in the history of Cornwall. So using isotopes to tag the fish, you can then use blockchain to verify that the lobster that you're buying in a shop, for example, really did come from that part of the UK. It might seem a small example in lobsters. Does it really matter? But it does if you like lobsters. Yeah? But think about pharmaceuticals. You want to know, if you're putting medicine inside your body, you want to know that that medicine actually is coming from the manufacturer that claims to have manufactured it and that it's been made in a safe, compliant way. And so these are matters of life and death. And blockchain can be part of the solution. It will never be the total solution, but this is a really smart use of technology. So using blockchain to manage audit data, tracking products, giving people access to audit information along the blockchain, verifying information is all part of that. And ultimately, in the case of BSI, making sure that there are a lot of fake BSI certificates out there in the world as well. There are a lot of fake BSI training certificates out there. You want to know if you're doing business with a company that claims to be certified by BSI, or if you're employing somebody who claims to have been trained by BSI, you actually want to know whether that claim is real or not. So at a practical level, there are very obvious reasons why blockchain can be useful. Another thing we're prototyping, we're running a program in the United States at the moment. We've got a series of drones going around building sites. Our environmental health and safety consulting business are using drones to do physical inspection of remote sites or high buildings or oil refineries. So where you can't go with people, or it's not safe, or it's too expensive to send people, we can use drones to get evidence. If you think about in the food industry, if you want to survey a palm oil plantation in Indonesia, it's not possible for one person to walk all the way around the perimeter of the plantation, but a drone can do it in 1 hour and give you digital photographic information, which you can use as one of the inputs into your audit findings and observations. So very simple example, and I think more and more we will be using drones where we're doing external surveys of assets. So you think about the work we're doing in the built environment or in food, in agri-food, for example. I think drones will become an increasing part of what we do. Equally, SmartGlass auditing. At the moment, we rely on an assessor goes to a client, makes observations, notes them on the laptop, writes up an audit report, submits it. That becomes the basis of a finding. There's really good technology to supplement that information and intelligence with visual evidence, which can be logged and incorporated into the findings to enhance the richness of the findings. The point of it is, somebody asked me the other day, is the assessor about to become redundant? The answer is no, because somebody has to wear the glasses, but it can be the client. It can be the client. It doesn't have to be our assessor. The client, we've done a test where a client has been wearing glasses and has been on the phone with a client manager, and the client manager basically, a bit like a human drone, has been guiding the person, say, look at this, I want to see this, and they've looked at it, they've seen it, and it's remote auditing using the clients, using technology, not to replace the assessor, but just to work in a smarter, more productive way. I don't think you will ever replace the physical site visit completely, because there's no substitute for human experience, instinct, insight, just that feeling you get. An experienced assessor who spent 20, 30 years inspecting companies, technology will not replace them. So think of these technologies as being additional tools that we can use to capture more data in a smarter, more effective way to increase the benefits of auditing. I won't go on that. This is one of the digital tools that we have already. I would just say the last thing on assurance, because it's mostly what we do here. I think the future of assurance for BSI and probably for our industry is, if you think about what we do at the moment in assurance, typically we go into a factory or an office and we do a moment in time audit, and we confirm to a client that on that day your organisation meets the requirements of the standard. And when we make that statement, it's correct. The reality is the next day that information is already out of date. People rely on our audit reports. So I think the value we can create through capturing this data and real-time information using drones or glasses or other big data management is predictive assurance, where we don't just tell people that they meet the standard today. We can look forward, we can use big data and potentially AI to help organizations predict what might happen in the future. For example, we might be able to predict an increased probability of a health and safety accident happening, which will allow our organization to take evasive action to prevent that happening. I think if we can do that, that will just take the assurance business to a much, much higher level, because many industries have been disrupted. You think of the taxi and the app calling solutions. You think about the travel industry and what people like TripAdvisor have done to traditional travel agents, for example. Whole industries have been disrupted. You think about banking. The fact we all bank on our phones now, we don't go to banks anymore, we don't write checks anymore. Whole industries have been disrupted. Our industry has not yet been disrupted. Fundamentally, our industry, if we're honest, we're still doing things the same way we were doing them 30 years ago, aren't we? So something's got to change, and BSI as a market leader, as not just the world's leading global standards national body, but also I believe the world's leading assurance company. Just to reassure you, we're very focused on this, and I hope that we can be that disruptor, that we can disrupt the industry, we can disrupt ourselves. It may be difficult, it may require changes to the way we work, but if we don't change, somebody is going to make us change. So if you have any ideas about how to use technology, how BSI can innovate more in this area, there's a portal where you can put ideas around, and please, if you want to get involved in innovation products, to think about different ways of serving our clients to deliver better solutions, then please put your hand up. So that's all I wanted to say.